Welcome to the 63rd episode of Dialogika, a podcast between two friends about the latest in politics, society, and feminism in Indonesia and the world. I'm Stephanie Tangkilisan.
And I'm Sweetian Lee. And this week we're going to talk about a news item that has been hot in everyone's mouths for the last few weeks. And that is Ahok's engagement to his 21, 22, 23-year-old girlfriend. We're going to talk about it.
And I mean, we're talking about this as a way to talk about how these women have been marginalized in their own life story, about how the media has portrayed the story as well, and what are the implications of what Ahok has done to politics, and just basically trying to think about this issue as in a more thoughtful, overly serious way, as we are prone to do.
Which is our brand.
Yes. As seen on our website, if you haven't checked it out already, Sweden did a really good job designing it, so we'd love for you to check it out and see show notes and other informations right over there.
So, after that shameless plug...
You appreciate my shameless plug. That was your word.
True. I mean, you're very good at shameless plugging.
You don't shamelessly plug ourselves on our own podcast. Where are we going to plug?
Here's to it. So, as I'm sure most of you, especially people in Indonesia, have heard, Ahok has been released from prison, as we mentioned in our previous episode. He's been out of prison now for about 2 weeks, and in that time, he has announced his engagement to via a YouTube interview with... Yeah, it was weird. We'll link to the YouTube interview where he announces his engagement to Puput Nastiti Devi, who is a policewoman, a former bodyguard and aide, to Ahok's ex-wife, Veronica Tan, and
who is a good 30 years younger than he is. He's around 52 years old. She's around 21 to 23. There's differing reports on this, and this is part of the problem of fact-checking in Indonesian journalism. I can't really say with certainty what it is. But anyway...
for those who don't know as well, Ahok used to be married to Veronica Tan, as we mentioned. Late 2017, I think, Ahok suddenly filed for divorce, claiming infidelity on Veronica's part. And in early April of 2018 of last year, they have officially filed for divorce. Ahok says that Veronica was having an affair with somebody for, I think, a few years. And Veronica has never publicly confirmed nor denied the circumstances. She just kept quiet. In the meantime, less than a year after the divorce has been finalized, Ahok is announcing his engagement. And reports say that they will probably get married sometime in February. Sometime this month. So that's where we're at right now with this strange telenovela-like story.
I know, you really can't make this up. Truth is stranger than fiction.
I know. And obviously there's the impulse to make fun of it in a way. And we really shouldn't. Let's talk about the implications of all this.
Yeah.
Well, actually, before we dive super deep into this, I know that in our last episode we talked that Ahok wants to be called BTP. Should we respect that in our conversation?
No. He doesn't deserve our respect right now.
I mean, yeah.
So,
all right.
I'm not
so I guess
Also, BTP is very confusing. It's also too much of a mouthful.
It sounds like a government program.
I don't want to give it to him, so I'm not gonna call him BTP, which stands for Basuki Cahayapurnama, which is his Indonesian name. And I think a way that he's trying to distance himself to his association with being Chinese Indonesian, which in a way, given the last few things that he's actually done, I actually agree with. Maybe distance himself from us.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily a bad thing from my perspective. But yeah, so he's been released, and he said that he wanted to, aside from marrying this young lady, who is, I can say young lady because she's younger than I am. Oh God, I'm old.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that. She's younger than us.
Oh yeah. She's
quite younger than us. More than 5 years younger.
Yeah. So at the same time, I want this to be like a respectful conversation, like about her as well. Like that's something I want to, like, you know, despite the situation of her being younger, it's not that we are saying like big age difference wouldn't work or that, you know, she deserves our ridicule for anything. I think if anything, we are making fun of Ahok for having to have known better. And it just feels like somewhat
patronizing.
The way he talks about her seems to me like very off-putting in so many different ways. Like, he's like a dirty old man, you know? Like
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the vibe. Kaya masum gitu loh.
Yeah, actually.
I don't know how to describe masum in English. Perverted? It's not quite that. It's
not quite perverted. Maybe perverse rather than perverted.
Perverse? Yeah.
Like, there's something that's just off about this entire situation.
Right.
And there's a certain strange power dynamic at play here, I think, because to pull back a little bit, right? Puput was a former bodyguard to Veronica Tan, Ahok's ex-wife. And the reason for that is obviously during Ahok's tenure as governor, he was, let's just say, not the most quiet of governors. He required a significant amount of security presence. And one of the people assigned to Veronica is Puput. And so that's a little bit of a background to how Ahok knows of Puput in the first place. In terms of whenever this relationship blossomed, we're not quite sure. But according to Ahok himself, the relationship really blossomed after his divorce with Veronica, which is less than a year ago in April.
Yeah.
I guess in my mind, the way I view it is that the relationship between Ahok and Puput started in sort of like a power dynamic situation, right? Like where he is the more powerful figure and she's working on behalf of him or for him, right? In some respect. And when he made the comments at Oso TV, when he announced that he was, he's been released, what are his plans, blah, 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 and that he's going to marry Puput, it seemed a lot like this is somebody that will listen to me and will be, I don't want to say like under my control, but like easier to manage.
Subservient,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because one of his, he's been very outspoken in the past about how Veronica is. It's interesting because I remember him praising Veronica for being independent, for being her own person, not necessarily like the stereotypical politician's wife in Indonesian culture where they only serve the politician. Like, she's her own person. Everybody knows her. Everybody knows her personality. Like, she can stand on her own 2 feet. But I think now it feels a little bit like he's saying that was one of the things that bothered him in their relationship. And this new person, Puput, who is younger, who used to work under him, will not do that. That's my gut reaction. That's sort of like how I've interpreted the situation. And certainly, when Puput herself appeared in the video with Ahok, it seemed like that would be the case. And I don't know. It gives me like weird chills, like seeing this entire situation unfold.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll be the first person to say that I didn't know about Puput until Ahok announced about his engagement with her, and apparently this has been in the rumor mill for months now.
Yeah.
So I'm very behind in this. I need to catch up on my Indonesian gossip.
Yeah, I mean, like when I first told Speedy and I wanted to talk about this, you were like, "What? Why?"
Is this relevant? Oh, I guess it is. People have been talking about it for a long time.
I think from what I've been hearing from people from back home is that, like, in this moment, like, Ahok completely lost the support of people who are, like, some of his strongest supporters. It's like a huge slap in the face for all the people who thought, they were defending a guy with integrity and nobility and who was just maligned in some way, and he turned out to be a scumbag. He was also especially popular among like middle-aged older women who saw him as like a straight shooter who was from their community or who they can respect, and like I think it offends also the first wife's club, basically. Just anyone who is a woman married to a man, and like, just can you imagine in that relationship, like, your wife has stuck through you through so many things, from like being a small town legislator to becoming vice governor who was persecuted, and you have like kids together, and then like this happens, and then you have your ex-husband who previous to this have said, who has like destroyed your character integrity in the public press, in the public eye, was saying you had an affair, suddenly goes and does all of this stuff, right? Like, because if you don't remember, like, what happened was, as Ahok was in jail, Ahok said that Veronica Tan, his ex-wife, had an affair, and, just completely tried to destroy her character and all of this different stuff. And then people were, at the time, kind of pissed at her. But, that
was during a time when there was a lot of good grace for Ahok, right? Because everybody was like, oh, you're being held on trial for a ridiculous charge. We're all gung-ho behind you. And if you say that Veronica Tan is this committed adultery and is like unfaithful to you, then we'll believe you till the end.
Right.
That was the sentiment.
Marriages fall apart. It happens, right? Like, but to be so vindictive about the situation and destroying the character in the national public eye in front of your kids, I think is just such a low thing to do. He's a stubborn individual, and he wants everybody to see things from his perspective. And I think it's a trait that we used to admire, that there's somebody who is gung-ho, who believes in what he's doing, and so has like strong convictions. But now it seems a little bit like misguided. So you can kind of see like how he was so self-righteous before. And, like, it seems to be, a complete 180 in terms of what you think. Well, those good traits turn out to be negative traits about.
Yeah, I mean...
And you start to, mistrust his judgment and his views on different things, right?
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me of all of the Kalijodo stuff where he kicked out people who are, like, most disenfranchised from a particular community and said it was good for the city. That's the kind of trait that clearly an individual who thinks that he's always right can't seem to listen to common sense and have empathy. Like, I think for me, like, it clearly shows the lack of empathy he has in general to other people, right? I don't know if it's like, if sociopathic is too strong a word, but like, it seems he's charismatic, he's likable to certain groups of people, and like, he has no sense of, like, how he is perceived externally, and he plays by the rules.
He plays by his rules, though.
Yeah, by his rules. I think there's
a certain narcissism to him, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's a sociopathic trait, by the way.
I'm sure it is. I mean, I'm not saying this in a sense, like, in an Indonesian sense of narcissism. Yeah. That's not what I meant. Yeah. I think, he's
beyond that.
It's a way of, like, you're being blinded by your own convictions and your own beliefs, and you're so stubborn and you're so narrow-minded in what you believe that you can't see beyond it, and you can't see how, this situation does not only affect you, this story does not only affect you, you're not at the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And I think because he was this and, I still think he is this groundbreaking individual, right, in Indonesian politics. Like, we can't take that away from him, for better or for worse. So many people idolized him that it fed into that narcissism, into those tendencies, so that because so many people are so willing to follow you to the ends of the earth, and you're thinking, oh, my views and where I stand on these issues and what I want to do, all of that is right. All of that is infallible. And I think now that we have this sort of period where he's been out of the public eye a little bit, we've been weaned off Ahok fever for a while. And then he comes out, and then he's back, and we're like, oh, right, he's not as great as I thought he was.
In a way, don't you think... Okay, I'm going to apply a very skeptical lens about this, and think about this in more political terms, right? this is a really fast way to make yourself not a threat in the public eye, because having lost popular support, he's not the same person with the gravitas he used to be.
Yeah.
And this has sort of really disarmed him politically. Like, he can't go in politics now. Like, he just can't in this country and in the space of especially more religious conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
He's been thoroughly morally discredited, and then he can just do whatever he wants now in a way, because like he's a free man and doesn't really pose a political threat anymore. And he can go his life with his young wife, right? Like, I think that's like a thought that I had with the situation. Like,
and maybe he alluded to this a little bit in his Instagram letter right before his release, when he said, "I want to be called Betepe. I don't want to be called Ahok anymore. I'm a new man."
Mm-hmm.
This is literally starting over, right? In a way, because starting a new family with somebody different, somebody of a wholly different kind of character than Veronica. I think there's something to be said about that. In a way, it's like he has to be in the public eye. He can't avoid that.
Yeah.
And this is a way to be like, all right, I am going to start over in the public eye. Wherever this takes me next, who knows? But I don't think he has any more political capital left in him. I don't think there's any value. I think he can still be a public figure that operates adjacent to politics. But I don't think he should ever be in politics. And again, I think this is his way of maybe resetting expectations of Ahok.
Yeah,
like, this is no longer going to be the dream governor, dream husband, dream Chinese, Indonesian, whatever. This is just going to be your regular, 50-year-old guy who's trying to start a new life out of prison.
Oh, God.
It's a part of me is a little bit sad because he had so much potential, but at the same time, it's also one of those things where can you be sad about something that could never have happened?
Part of what I want to talk about in a different way is like how the attention on this has been somewhat problematic in the media as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the way her images are put out and like...
You mean Puput?
Sensationalized in a way.
Yeah. And even before we knew of her identity, there was a lot of rumors, a lot of Indonesian gossip sites wrote many trashy articles about who is this person who is in the police force.
Right.
Her initial is P and is,
Right. I think it's like, I sense what's uncomfortable about it for me.
Yeah.
I think there's this narrative of Palawan sexy that I think is being fed into this. So there's this thing in Indonesian, so like sexy policewoman. There's been like, this kind of objectification of sexy, of women who happen to be police officers and are young and attractive. And it just rubs me in a really like wrong kind of way. Mm-hmm. They are enforcers of the law who undergo training. Like it also like, I feel like cannot be absent from the narrative of like the fact that policewomen in Indonesia are subjected to virginity tests.
Mm-hmm.
They're both like sex objects, but also like needs to be morally pure, right? Like there's this uncomfortable feeling of having to live in this narrow space of being I think it's like a dance that like a lot of women have to play, right? Like being virtue signaling of the fact that you're a virgin or like a morally pious woman, and that being a desirable thing, but also like you have to be sexy or you have to be like conventionally attractive, or and it's just like
feminine or whatever.
It's and an inability to just be who you are. And then like, because when I was Googling her, it's like you can't find anything about who she is as a person.
Yeah.
How did she get to the police academy? Why does she want to become a police officer? Like, you know, like things of substance that tell you who she is as an individual. Like, I can't even like quickly confirm her age. Like, there's an absolute disinterest of her as an individual and as a living, breathing human being. And you're just like, I don't know. It doesn't humanize her I haven't seen anything that humanizes her in a way that feels substantial to me.
Yeah.
And Ahok's video also, like, when he was introducing her, felt like very like showcasing her, you know, like, oh, look at this young hot thing that I've like managed to get now. And it's like, no, you creepy old man, like, what are you doing?
At the end of the day, he's just a creepy old man, right? In this situation right now.
He like constantly talked over her, and interrupted her, and it just seems to me like not the best start for a healthy relationship, you know, like, so that's like kind of what makes me really uncomfortable about the situation as well. And I think while I agree that, like, I mean, I've agreed a lot with what people are saying about, like, Veronica Tan was, what Ahok did a great disservice to her. Like, I also don't want to be, like, bashing Puput because of Veronica's behalf. Like, they're both women who were attracted to Ahok for some reason. And her value is can't be determined by whether or not she cooks or
listens to Ahok.
Yeah, but there's also something weird about the narrative of like, oh, like poor victim Veronica, you know? Like, to me, she was a woman who knows what she wants, and like I watched her past interviews with Ahok and Ahok at the same time, and she definitely like holds her own and like is clearly a very intelligent, strong woman who I think even Ahok is a little bit scared of.
Yeah.
And and I think it just takes such a strong woman to be quiet and amidst all of this mess, this trash of like situation, you know?
Yeah.
And I think she deserves a lot of credit for being who she is all this time and not trying to defend herself and just sticking her head down and then like taking care of her business and her kids.
Veronica has kept quiet about all of this, both the divorce as well as this news about Ahok's engagement ever since. She's laid low. We know that she still lives in Jakarta and she's still around, but she's definitely laid low and not make any public statements or appearances about this. And I think
Ahok should learn from her.
I know, right? Except Ahok will never learn.
And just shut up. I don't know what lessons to take away from all of this, honestly. I think I just want people to be careful about how we talk about situations like this with our friends, with our partners, and I think the main takeaway for me is like, okay, despite the ridiculousness of the situation, let's step back and like treat the women involved here as individuals.
Yeah, with dignity.
Not be swayed by Ahok's narrative on the situation, because I think we're falling into his trap. And just being really careful about, okay, in a way it's like so ridiculous that people might think it's funny, but there are wider implications into religious extremism that this feeds into their narrative. And I think it's just something for us to be cautious about when either dismissing this as gossip, because I think there's just so much in here that, you know, could determine, that influences the discussion on women and on morals in our society.
Yeah. And
not in a good way. Because it really just allows people to treat women like clickbait titles and reducing them to stereotypes.
Yeah, and I think, you know, certainly anybody who lives in Indonesia and consumes Indonesian news knows that this kind of news is often easily, you know, becomes gossip, becomes the things you spread over WhatsApp. You laugh about it or you joke about it.
Right.
But we forget that there are living human beings behind these stories that are not named Ahok. There are other people. And like you said, the way the media has framed it, the way Ahok has framed the whole situation, it reduces these individuals into circumstantial characters, right? They're not, they don't have any say in this in a way. They don't have their narrative. And it's so easy to fall into that trap because it's the way a lot of news has been talked about and discussed in Indonesia for a long time. And I think Stephanie and I think our listeners know that we can do better in terms of how we talk about these kind of issues and not just easily laugh it off. And I'll be the first one to admit, when I first read this, my gut instinct, my initial reaction is to make a joke out of it, like, this is ridiculous, this is insane, who are these people, what are they doing? But I have to say, like, having this conversation makes me better in terms of considering the viewpoints of everyone involved, how other people see this, and how we can't just brush this kind of thing aside as a joke. Because we all love to laugh about Indonesian politics and Indonesian society, but there are some really, really deep, difficult issues we need to tackle.
Yeah.
Also, just as an aside, this keeps reminding me of Hamilton. I think it's because we kept using the word narrative. It's like the male lead is the only story being told, and we don't hear about the stories of the others around him, the women around him. Their stories are always told as if the male story is the center of the universe, when in fact they are their own universes and they have their own stories to tell.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find more information and resources of whatever we talked about on our website, dialogika.id.
Music credits to John Dealey, Lee Roosevelt, and of course, Broke for Free.
If you like what you hear and want to support us, please review our podcast on the Apple Podcast app or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. And please share our podcast with your friends. It's the best way to spread the word about Dialogika.
If you want to get more involved, we'd love to hear from you. Our email is dialogikapodcast@gmail.com, or just shoot us a message on our Facebook page.
You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, and now Twitter. Please follow us on these various platforms. Our Twitter handle is @DialogikaPod. Also, follow me on Twitter. It's Steph Tank. That's STEPHTANGK.
Thank you again, and see you guys next time.
Bye!